celebrating 42 years of
Yeah.
ska. I
Well,
am,
that was last year already.
was it?
We had to cancel the tour mostly because of the COVID thing. So it's really officially 43 years now.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah, man.
So, um, I told you before, you'd played club I DJ'd at early 90s, so
Yeah.
obviously been a fan for a long time.
Mm.
And I going through, I was hoping to get you in my booth tonight, and thank you for coming. And one of the things, I hit your website, and I never really thought of this as you say one of the first third wave ska bands, and I always thought of you as second wave
Yeah.
because you started 81. If you take the Specials and Madness, who we can really, I think, call the first of the second wave bands, would you agree?
Yeah, them Selector, English Beat, those
Absolutely.
bands.
That
Yeah.
whole two tone movement.
Mm.
Um, I mean, you're 2 years behind them.
Well, what happened is I came to USA in 1980, so it was like hot on the heels of that. So I was like flabbergasted over here when uh, I wanted to go to see the English Beat playing at the Roseland, and I was saying to people, "Come on, see this band, they're great," and they're like, "What's scamming? Who are these people?"
Right.
And I was like, "Wow, come on!" So that's kind of what pushed me into starting a ska band. Mainly, in 1981, just for something to do, really, just to
I
mess
mean,
around
let
afterwards.
me get this straight. Nobody wanted to go see a ska band, so I'm going to start a ska band.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind
Well,
of counterintuitive
it was kind
there.
of like that. You've seen that movie, The Blues Brothers, right? When they go in the church to collect the money for the penguin, and they get
Yes,
the
the,
shaft of light comes down, and
the
yeah,
band.
and
The
that's how
band.
it's kind of that was like my epiphany, Blues Brothers epiphany moment.
One of the greatest movies of all time,
Yeah,
if I may say so. Cab Calloway's in there. Aretha.
yeah,
Everybody's in there.
yeah. The whole like Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper, all those guys, all the Stax Volt
Yeah,
studio guys in the
yeah,
band, Blue Lou Marino.
yeah. And those walking bass lines are really the beginning of ska, aren't they?
Well, I mean, to understand really what where the sky music came from, those cats down in Jamaica were all listening to shortwave radio coming down from New Orleans mostly.
right.
So they were listening to all those big bands, Louis Jordan,
Right.
that whole swing blues thing he was doing,
Motown.
and Count Basie, you know.
Yes.
So they were really into that, and that's what they're hearing on the radio. Motown as well, less so, but because they were into the big band jazz stuff more.
Right.
And the guys who were starting, particularly the Scatlites, for example, who I guess were like the flagship band of the time, and those musicians, like individually or collectively, backed up most of the studio singers that the producers had. And there was like a core of musicians who would play on all the records.
Right.
You know, Lynn Tate, guitar players like that. So they were all listening to that American big band sound and modeling themselves on that and coming up with their own screwy little rum infused Jamaican version of it. It's like ska is like a Jamaican bootleg of American swing, basically. Yeah,
Absolutely. The Toasters' first gig,
yeah.
opening up for Bad Brains.
Well, it's kind of like Bad Brain with no S because I think HR was actually in jail at that time
Right.
for something. So it was the other guys, the rest of the band, playing a reggae set,
Okay.
and I was blown away by that because they play reggae better than they play hardcore
Absolutely.
if you could get that. But so yeah, our first
Sorry,
gig
we're
was
not allowed to call them a hardcore band. They don't like that.
okay. The bad brain. Well, they're the bad brains.
Yes.
They're their own thing. But so that was our first gig. Yeah, like no pressure, right?
Right. Of
Yeah.
course.
So that was at the A7 Club. I think we made $22. I remember getting a black eye. That was the most memorable thing about that show. So good night.
Now, another how did it happen? Recommendations. Joe Jackson.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just talking to him actually.
Yeah.
Funny you mentioned his name. I'm going to England after this, so he's coming to one of the shows, and he's booking. I'm going to go have some dinner with him. He's book a room in this famous pub called the Haunch of Venison in Salisbury, where Truman and Winston Churchill had a summit in World War II. So we're going to go have dinner in that room. But he was. I first met him in the late '70s when I was working in London at the comic shop, and he was one of my clients. He would bring me a list of comic books and say, "Can you find me these? You know, these are the ones I want to get.
Right.
Can you find them for me?" So that's how I met him, and we serendipitously we ended up moving to New York at about the same time. So we walked in Forbidden Planet there. We're like both like, "What are you doing here?" You know,
That's
it's like you're
amazing.
living. I live here. So he started helping the band out at the early days. He played a bunch of shows at CBGB's with us, and at the Cat Club he appeared with us, playing sax or playing keyboards. And he produced the first EP, Recriminations EP, in 1985, which was really the springboard for us being able to establish the band as a national touring act, and then the rest is kind of history, I suppose.
Yeah, because I mean, he had a name at that point.
Yeah,
You know, he's well, assuming he had a name when you met him in the UK.
yeah. Well, I think his first, the Look Sharp album came out in 1976, actually. So he was kind of right there, piggybacked along with like the whole ska scene. And I mean, when you think about what's happening in England at that time, there's a whole two-tone ska movement. We had that whole like new wave pop movement with Joe, Elvis Costello,
Yep.
bands like that, and then you had that whole like synth explosion, like Human League, Gary Newman, all those guys doing their thing, and then the whole punk rock scene at the same time. So it was like a real like plethora of musical explosion at that time. It was great.
And it's interesting. Like a lot of the new wave bands, there were not a lot of ska bands, but a lot of the new wave bands were still they were throwing that 4/4 with the upbeat in. They were playing around with that ska sound,
Yeah,
it, in a different way. But I mean, the Clash was through ska in. I mean, everybody was playing with a little bit of a ska sound,
yeah.
through, at least through the mid '80s.
Well, I mean, England is such a small scene, really, and it's much more well knit in terms of like the communication network than the USA is. It sometimes in America takes quite a long time for people to figure out what's going on,
Mm.
particularly pre-internet era.
Yeah.
Um, Now with the internet, that's all changed. But in England, things it's a lot easier to get a trend started because more people had ready access to it through the radio mostly.
Right. You seem to be, I mean, relentless in your pursuit of, shall we say, never having a real job. I mean, you're
You sound like my mother, man.
well. You know what though? I mean, I love it because I mean, I'm in corporate America, so
Yeah,
Monday through Friday, and and this is my fun little escape from it.
I've never had what you would call a real job. You know, I've had some part-time jobs. I worked in a pub, worked on a farm, all that kind of stuff. But I never had like a 9 to 5.
Right.
That's what I mean.
So let's talk about how do we go from being, shall we say, I mean, at this point, the oldest continuously running ska band in the world at this point. I mean,
Well,
well,
a lot of those
Skylights is still
Skylights are
playing.
still going.
Yeah, Skylight's still going, but not
But
much.
not with the original guys. So
Right.
I don't know if that counts. But they've been going a long time. They're like 40 years, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of those two-tone bands are still going. A lot of them went on a hiatus. I think the only band that played through consistently, and I think they should get more credit for it, is Bad Manners,
Oh, yes.
because all those other bands took a break in the 80s and went off and did other stuff. Um, but
No, they never got the credit due. Um,
Bad Manners, no.
Bad Manners. No, I mean, absolutely just epic. I've never seen them live, but I mean, I'm a YouTube junkie. I will sit and just watch videos for an hour,
Well,
and
the thing with Dougie, Buster's real name is Dougie
yeah,
Trundle. That's real name. He always has a really great band, and right now it's a bunch of younger guys, but he's got his old drummer back, who's just a maniac. And I think he always had a consistently great band, and and a real great sense of humor. But because they were just like messing around all the time, I don't think people really took them seriously. But they got some great tracks.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think there's too many ska bands that should really be taken seriously.
Well, I don't know. There's a serious side to it. I mean,
Yeah.
don't
Well,
say that to Pauline Black. She'll beat you up.
oh, I'm sure. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you take some of the ska bands, you know, well, I mean, especially in the two tone era, that that was a political movement as much as it was
Yeah,
a musical movement,
absolutely.
and that was
Which is
absolutely
which is
serious.
something we never had over. If you look at our lyrics, we have a lot of very political songs, like dealing with like racism and unemployment and slavery and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. So if you dig a little bit into the lyrics, you'll see there's a lot more social consciousness than just being like a frat boy.
Right.
But I think by and large, that's kind of the direction that ska music took in the USA, for better or for worse. But in England, it was a lot more of a socially political movement, and that's kind of what got me into it in the first place.
My, I got my two
Yeah,
tone tattoo. That was that. I can't tell you how much the anti racism part of the two tone movement sucked me into the music.
well, that's
It's
two tone is black and white
yeah.
together, you know.
But I mean, that was what drew me into. I was a punk rock. I was a hardcore
Mm.
kid. I was into the whole DC scene, and um, and really that was when somebody had gave me a Specials album. I listened to it. It was like I was hooked. That was it. I was done.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because a lot of people get hold of the wrong end of the stick, and you talk about skinheads, for example, which is one like facet of the subculture. And a lot of people here don't believe me when I say, well, the original skinheads were all Jamaican
Right.
black factory workers. Those are the original
Right. It
skinheads.
was shaved off the dreads.
Shaved off their hair at work because it was dirty, and then
Right.
go out, put the suits on, go down the dance on the weekend. But the original skinheads were all Jamaican guys.
Right.
And people don't believe me when I tell them that.
It's funny. It's a lot easier to stick with what you think you know than to be
Yeah.
open to little things that we like to call facts that are still true whether you believe them or not.
Well, I just say, well, I had the benefit of being there, mate, so I know,
Right.
and you don't.
Yeah. No. Exactly. I.
But
Yeah,
people get very swayed by what they see on TV and like, oh, skinheads, all these like fascist guys. Like, dude, there's not. I mean, obviously there are some of them, but that's not what it is. But when you can pretty much do the same with anything. When you scratch below the surface, you'll find out that things are really quite different than how the media portrays them.
well,
It's like facile pigeonholing that they do.
let's face it. The news is there to sell commercials, and fear sells more than facts.
Yeah.
And that's where I mean, we had a great skinhead movement here in the early '90s. Because there was a big problem with neo Nazis coming down, and I say 100% the local skinheads is what drove away the neo Nazis in this area. The neo Nazis would come down, skinheads would hang outside, and there'd be a clash, and they eventually quit coming down.
Yeah.
And so, but what's it called, the average Joe would just call that a clash between rival skinhead gangs. That's not it. You and I know the difference. We were there, but fear sells more than facts.
No, that's true.
So, the point I was getting at with the never holding a real job, I wanted to talk about your little side projects. Shall I say? I mean, you had your beer, you have your coffee, your hot sauce.
Yeah.
How 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 often are you doing these things? Is this how do you get into them?
Well, they're all collabs with people. The beer we make, mostly with Sky Brewing and Denver, Colorado. We work with those guys, but there's a couple of other brewers such as Pizza Boy in Pennsylvania made a Dub 56 beer. My buddy Carson Souza made the Talk is Cheap beer when he had pig mines up in Illinois. So it's guys who are like fans, and we work with them. The hot sauce is this crazy guy called Danny Cash in Colorado. My son was actually went to work for him out of college at his startup. So that's how I got that hook up with the hot sauce guy.
Right.
And the coffee is pretty recent. He was Mike Witt was there last night actually in Orlando, so that's something. But I just get fed up drinking bad coffee, so we just carry our own around with us now.
There you go.
Yeah.
So how much of this do you get any of your own input into any of these products, or is this like?
I tell them what kind of beer I like and what kind of coffee I like, and then but I leave all that up to them.
Right. Well, that's what they do, and you know.
Yeah.
You know,
And,
they don't come up on stage and play the guitar. You don't go.
I don't go roast their beans.
Yeah.
But it works out pretty good, and I think people get a kick out of that because it's kind of like nobody wants to buy music anymore. That's all. That's really boring. That's
right.
Boring.
Well, yeah. You need to do something.
Yeah.
And and we're glad you're still touring. We're glad you're still playing music and entertaining us. I don't know. I think I've seen you out 5, 6, 7 times now. It's always a great show, and we're so happy you take the hike all the way down here to South Florida because I know it's a hike.
Yeah, but I mean, once you're in Florida, it's okay. It's the getting here that's difficult.
Yes.
But once you're in Florida, it's all pretty much like contiguous. So we're going to go play on the West Coast tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Punta Gorda.
Yeah, Punta Gorda, and then Jacksonville, and then we're going to go home to Carolinas.
Right.
Give those guys a couple of shows.
Yeah.
Goodness knows they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and I'm going to love you and leave you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
I thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in just a little bit.
Yeah, and if people want to see what we're doing, www.thetoasters.band is